finish of this class, in America, 4 people are going to die, and the result of their death is because of suicide.
Wow.
It's very often that people talk about suicide in a joking kind of manner, they crack jokes at it. They don't really realize it's actually really big in society, and they don't realize the effects of it. And we really need to take into consideration it's a big deal. For starters, there's the signs and the symptoms of suicide. Ideation is one of them. That's basically when you just start to talk about suicide, you have suicidal thoughts, not exactly saying you're going to kill yourself, but thinking about it and talking about it. There's also substance abuse, which would be like, not really marijuana, but more like shooting heroin, cocaine, taking a lot of pills, trying to kill yourself. And then there's also withdrawal. Let's say you're a very active kid, you play a lot of sports, you go to school, and then just over time, you stop playing your sports, you stop hanging out with your friends, you just kind of really conceal to yourself and you don't really want to do anything. Those are some of the big ones. And then there's also some really obvious ones like a written will. Like if an 18-year-old would write a will, it's kind of obvious, you know. Usually like a 60, 70, and 80-year-old person would write a will, not an 18-year-old. Another main one would be giving away possessions like your phone, your computer, maybe something very valuable to yourself, to your friends, your family members, as like, here, you can have this, because I'm not going to need it anymore. And then the most obvious one would be a suicide note, and that's when you say your final goodbye, and you list everything that's going on, and it's just to sum up why you're going to commit suicide. And also linked with the signs and symptoms, it would be anxiety. A lot of people that commit suicide have not an anxiety disorder per se, but a lot of anxiety in their life, and that could lead from persistent thoughts of bad things happening to you, severe agitation when you get really angry at people, when you can't hold it together sometimes. And people with anxiety disorder, they go off of impulse. So what that means is whatever they're doing at that time, whatever they're thinking or feeling, they're going to do it. So doctors say that if you live with someone that has an anxiety disorder, it's better to not have any kind of guns in the house, or you should lock up medication, you shouldn't really have knives and stuff. And then there's the causes of suicide, mainly are mental illnesses. A really big one is being bipolar, because when you're bipolar, you have your ups, you have your downs, and people that are bipolar have a 20% higher chance of committing suicide than the average normal person because of all their ups and all their downs. Then there's schizophrenia. This is actually at the bottom of the list. Only 1% of Americans commit suicide because of schizophrenia. Only 1%. It's very low, but still, it's a cause of suicide. And then another big one that's very common is personality disorders. Personality disorders can come from school, getting laid off from your job, having financial troubles, any kind of sort of life problem. And 1/3 of suicide victims have a type of personality disorder. And then there's also depression. It's not exactly a mental illness, but it's linked to the mental illness. Depression can lead to it. And you can get depressed from different types of abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, all that. And then there's illness. You could become depressed from being ill. Say a big one would be cancer. That's something to be upset about, maybe if you're dying. But the reverse effect of that is if you get a medication for the illness, the medication you get can actually turn into a depressant. So it's kind of like a double negative. Some way it's going to affect you. Another way of being depressed, you have your thoughts of being forgotten. You have deaths in your family, you lose a friend, anything that really has to do with death. And then also your personal problems. So then if your personal problems get a lot stronger and higher, then your depression will turn into a personality disorder. Then there's a couple ways to prevent suicide.